He redrew the map of Europe and made the greatest empires tremble. Napoleon Bonaparte was the master of the world, yet for years he stood powerless against his deepest fear. He was terrified his dynasty would die with him, but fate had a different script. Napoleon left behind 3 sons. 2 were kept secret, though acknowledged. 1 was legitimate. 3 boys carrying the blood of a conqueror. 3 entirely different destinies playing out like a mockery of history. For over a decade, the emperor carried a heavy burden. He conquered nations, but he could not conquer biology. He blamed his beloved wife, Josephine, for their lack of an heir, but secretly, he doubted himself. Then came the revelation. In 1806, his mistress Eleonore de Noël gave birth to a boy, Charles Léon. 4 years later, his great Polish love, Marie Walewska, delivered another son, Alexandra. The truth was undeniable. The emperor was capable of passing on his legacy. Napoleon made a ruthless, pragmatic calculation. He divorced the only woman he truly loved and married Marie-Louise of Austria. It was a pure transaction for bloodlines. When word reached Marie-Louise that Napoleon was looking for a wife, she wrote, "I feel sorry for the poor princess he will choose." Marie-Louise was raised with a deep resentment towards France. She was also influenced by her grandmother, Maria Carolina, who despised the French Revolution, which ultimately led to the tragic end of her sister, Marie Antoinette. When Marie-Louise finally met Napoleon, she said, "You are much more handsome than in your portrait." In 1811, the gamble paid off. To the deafening roar of cannons across Paris, a legitimate son was born, François, the King of Rome. Napoleon finally had his dynasty, but the triumph was brutally short-lived. Just 3 years later, the French Empire collapsed. The emperor was forced out of power. His golden child, the legitimate heir, was stripped away and sent to Vienna, placed directly into the hands of Napoleon's greatest enemies. Father and son would never see each other again. But before we reveal what really happened to him in Austria, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. While the illegitimate sons grew up breathing the free air of France, the rightful heir was systematically erased. In Austria, the boy was stripped of his roots. They took away his title. They took away his language. They even took his name. He was no longer Napoleon. He was Franz, the Duke of Reichstadt. Austrian Chancellor Metternich engineered a strict psychological quarantine. The boy was isolated from anyone loyal to his father. Speaking French was forbidden. The opulent, gilded halls of Schönbrunn Palace became a beautiful, suffocating prison. Meanwhile, Napoleon's hidden sons were freely carving out their own paths. Charles Léon was gambling away fortunes in loud Parisian casinos, living a life of reckless indulgence. Alexander Walewski was receiving a brilliant European education, moving effortlessly through high society. Napoleon had officially recognized Alexander as a count of the empire. By his father's own decree, the illegitimate son was a French aristocrat with a title rooted in the soil of Paris. The unrecognized sons were busy building their futures. The legitimate heir was trapped. He was carefully guarded like a dangerous weapon, forced to be a ghost in a foreign court. Marie-Louise married her advisors twice. She married Count Adam Albert von Neipperg shortly after the passing of Napoleon, and they had 3 children. During her 3rd marriage to Count de Bombelle, Marie-Louise lived in Parma for the rest of her days, governing the duchy and protecting her second family away from French political intrigues. She was not permitted to take Napoleon's son with her. Franz lived at the Austrian court, where his grandfather showed him great affection, but he constantly faced pressure from Austrian ministers and nationalists who tried their hardest to push him into the background and make him irrelevant. There were concerns that he might be secretly smuggled into France to reclaim the throne, as he could easily be disguised as a girl. Franz began to resent his Austrian relatives and his mother for their lack of support, and started to identify himself as Napoleon II, surrounding himself with French courtiers. Franz distanced himself from his mother. He felt that the Austrian family was holding him back to avoid political controversies. He told his friend, "If Josephine had been my mother, my father would not be laid to rest on St. Helena, and I would not be in Vienna. My mother is kind but weak. She was not the wife my father deserved." In the quiet corners of the library, he secretly devoured books on military strategy. He studied battle maps, tracing his father's historic victories by candlelight. He knew about his father. He read newspapers his guardians tried to keep from him. He was obsessed with the life of a soldier. More than once, he demanded active military command. But the monarchies of Europe were absolutely terrified of his ambition. They knew the French people still whispered his father's name. They feared the exact moment this boy would put on a general's uniform, mount a horse, and spark a second continental war. They monitored his every waking move, ensuring his military career remained entirely ceremonial. Then came the ultimate betrayal. A severe, aggressive respiratory illness took hold. Tuberculosis began to quietly consume him from the inside out. His lungs deteriorated. The harder he fought to become a conqueror, the faster his body collapsed under the strain. While the rightful heir was physically fading away in a heavily guarded Vienna bedroom, a completely different reality was unfolding across the continent. Alexander Walewski, the illegitimate Polish son, was stepping directly into the light. He possessed a staggering, undeniable asset, a face that was a mirror image of the fallen emperor. The sharp profile, the piercing gaze, the unmistakable presence. Alexander did not apologize for his scandalous origins. He weaponized them. He confidently navigated the highest, most exclusive circles of European society. He engaged in high-stakes diplomacy, looking directly into the eyes of the men who had defeated his father. Francois, the King of Rome, took his last breath. He was just 21 years old. He died in Vienna, surrounded by Austrian doctors, utterly separated from the empire he was born to rule. In those final, fading moments, he looked back at a life that was never truly his own. He is said to have whispered a haunting summary of his existence. "My birth and my death, that is my whole story." Across the royal courts of Europe, there was no profound mourning. There was only a quiet, collective sigh of relief. The ultimate political threat was finally dead. But the Bonaparte bloodline was not. The illegitimate sons outlived the golden child by decades. Charles Léon lived to the age of 74. He left a chaotic trail of public scandals, massive debts, and pistol duels, freely burning through his years on the vibrant streets of Paris. Alexander Walewski went even further. He lived to be 58 and reached the absolute heights of government. The unrecognized son became the Minister of Foreign Affairs for France. He actively shaped the policies of Europe, commanding respect and negotiating at the very tables where his father's destruction had once been sealed. Today, that bloodline has embedded itself in the modern European elite. The Colonna Walewski family still moves through the upper echelons of French society. The official house of Bonaparte remains as well, though the battlefield has moved from the front lines to the boardroom. The title of head of the imperial house now belongs to Jean-Christophe Napoleon. Born in 1986, he is a Harvard-educated financier, was a drama in itself. He took the mantle at just 11 years old after his grandfather's will bypassed his own father, choosing the grandson to carry the weight of the imperial name into a new era. The irony of his bloodline is staggering. Jean-Christophe is a Bonaparte, but through his mother, he is also a descendant of King Louis XIV, the very monarch his ancestors' revolution sought to destroy. The conqueror and the conquered are finally united in a single man. In 2019, history came full circle. He married Countess Olympia von Unzu-Arco-Zinneberg, a direct relative of Napoleon's second wife, Marie-Louise. They celebrated their union at Fontainebleau, the former palace of French monarchs. Jean-Christophe lives a quiet, professional life in London, trading in technology services rather than territories. Yet, the dynasty continues. With the birth of his son, Louis Charles, the line enters a new century. The name is long, and the history is heavy, but the blood of the Bonapartes is still moving forward. If you found this story interesting, make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.